yeah, I'm deeply grateful to the religious studies department. I think, I always thought if I ever got really rich, which is not what happens when you pursue a life path like mine, I was like, okay, Hutchinson Public Library and the religious studies department at KU, those are my two, the things that I owe, the institutions I owe the most to for my adolescence and early, adulthood, so, yeah.
I ended up in religious studies and sociology just because they were the most interesting to me. I bounced around between different majors, didn't know what I wanted to do, and I was like, forget this, I'm just gonna study what's the most interesting and then see what happens. And then law school, I practiced for a little bit after law school, but I didn't go to law school thinking I was gonna be a lawyer. I just, again, thought it was really interesting, and I think the religious studies, the things that are interesting about religious studies are the same things that are interesting about the constitutional law issues and all of that you can take on in law school. And
what do you think?
I think it's just the kind of trying to understand, like Sarah was saying, trying to understand where people are coming from, and knowing that there's maybe not you may think there's a right or wrong answer, but knowing that we're not going to arrive at a right or wrong answer that everyone can agree on, and so figuring out what's the way we can navigate things that's at least going to feel the most fair to the most amount of people, I think is really interesting work, and it's challenging and hard, and religion is one aspect. It's the way that people understand the world, and so trying to figure that out is interesting. But then after school, I wanted to try practicing law, just to give it a go and see if maybe I had misconceptions about it, but it just ended up not being a good fit for me. And then I ended up kind of in more of a research analysis role for the legislature, which I really enjoyed, and that just gave me more of a chance to learn more, again, about people. So anything where you get to learn about people, I think is really interesting. So the law gives you a chance to do that in a lot of different ways, and kind of gives you the most options. If you're unsure about what you want to do, it just gives you a ton of options. So I've practiced law, I've done research and analysis. My last job, I was a fundraiser for the law school. Now I'm kind of taking a sabbatical to figure out what's next. So I always like to tell people that are figuring it out that it's okay if you don't know what you want to do. I'm going to be going on my 4th career here soon. So, but religious studies, law, it's just a great way to give yourself a broad amount of, broad platform, strong foundation, whatever, to work from, and you can do a bunch of different things after that.
Oh, great, thanks.
The Douglas County District Court is a great place to even to volunteer, now that they have a self-help center there, and I can connect you to those opportunities if you're interested in doing something like that. It's something I probably wouldn't have thought about as an undergrad, but it's a great opportunity locally. If anyone's interested.
What's it called?
It's the Douglas County District Court Self-Help
okay.
Center. And so it's, of course, right there at the courthouse, and they are going to be remodeling that courthouse and making the self-help center bigger, and it's a relatively new one, about a year old now. There's a big dearth of attorneys out in western Kansas. Not that you would be doing an attorney role, but we need court navigators all over the state. Douglas County, Johnson, they're well resourced, and that's part of why that infrastructure is there. It makes it possible to host people. We also need people who are willing to go to places in the state that are, don't have the same level of resources. And so, but if you are not so much about direct service and you want to create resources or do that type of thing, OJA, where I work, the Office of Judicial Administration, we have a lot of opportunities for that as well. If you have graphic design experience, or you want to develop a handout about a particular legal topic, it's something we can work on. So.
Yeah, you mentioned that you were kind of between journalism and law for a bit there, and that you had less experience with law. How'd you end up making that decision ultimately?
Whether I was wrong or right, I thought that law had the potential for greater impact, and that if I was really interested in writing, I should just write, and I really had to get real about, did I think I wanted to do the work that a journalist was doing? And, at that point in time, I can't say that I really understood the work that a lawyer would be doing, but that's how I made the decision. I really was focused on the impact my career would have and what I would be doing, and naively thought I could probably do both, and I should just pursue the law degree. So, but yeah, that's why.
Has law turned out to be like doing the important work that you thought when you made the choice between
Definitely not always. I still think that there's a lot of potential in the law, but it's. I still wrestle with feeling like I should be out there representing people, trying to do the work, the things that I see people struggling with on a daily basis, and it really is kind of heartbreaking sometimes if you go to one of these big dockets they have in Wichita, where it's hundreds of people showing up and they don't have any idea how to navigate the system, and they have no hope of getting an attorney to represent them. And so I try to remind myself that I feel like I'm upstream now in a way that maybe I can help, but I guess the jury's still out, honestly, on whether what I'm doing has the impact that I thought it might, I've been lucky that I've been able to, over time, as you build trust with the people you're working with and help persuade people that, this is important to focus on. It took me 10 years before I could focus my entire job on access to justice work, and even now I'm not. I have this side gig at my own job where I'm essentially reviewing all the memos that go to the Supreme Court before our administrative conference, and that really doesn't have anything to do with my main job, and so it's not 100% that type of work, but and early on, other jobs that I had, when I worked for the Department of Labor and when I worked for the City of Manhattan, there wasn't a whole lot involved in those jobs that was what I thought, I would be doing. But I found that in every environment, there's an opportunity to stop and connect and help people. And so, I think there's still a possibility. I talk to a lot of people who go into the law with the idea that they're going to change things for the better and get very jaded very quickly. And so I would never tell people that that's definitely the way to go, because I think you have to be thoughtful about it. And the tough thing is it's hard to know, until you get into it, what you're getting into. But doing things like, shadowing Brandy at the Self-Help Center, or going to Kansas Legal Services and shadowing those attorneys and seeing, to the extent that you can, and seeing what people are actually doing in the system, I think, is the best way to do it. And I didn't really do any of that before I went to law school, so nor do I think I really understood how. So, yeah. Honestly, some of the ethics of the profession make it hard to, we're always towing this line between you can't form a lawyer-client relationship. You have to be careful about what information you're providing. You can't provide legal advice as part of the court system. It's always kind of a delicate balance. And then you want people who are non-attorneys to be able to help out when it's appropriate to do so, but you can inadvertently walk into the unauthorized practice of law. And so there's all kinds of, and there's a big movement for regulatory reform in other states right now where they're trying to create these community justice workers who are non-attorneys, who understand enough about a particular area like eviction or debt collection, where there isn't a lot of attorneys representing people on one side, and they're getting trained so that they can provide that, but you need regulatory reform for that to work. And so Alaska has a program like that. Oklahoma's starting to, especially in the tribal nations where they don't necessarily have the same restrictions that we have elsewhere. So I think that we will get there over time. But I know it's not good for pre-law advisor but there's other pathways.
Absolutely,
right?
I'll be the first to say too,
Yeah.
right? The legal profession, there is, all that is old is new again. We go back 10 years. What was the formation of the law school? It wasn't a law school. It was maybe you clerked under a judge, you were an article clerk, and you would have done work being supervised. And so we're seeing this now. There's 4 states where you don't have to have a law degree to practice law. Oregon's the most recent one, and they're now creating an apprenticeship program. You supervise work for a period of years, certain minimum hours. After that 3-year period, you present a portfolio demonstrating that I have the same competencies as someone who went to law school.
There was a time I was sort of down on law school and was like, oh, I wouldn't tell kids to go to law school unless they knew they wanted to be a lawyer because it's so expensive. But I've kind of circled back around, having done so many different things, in being confident again to say that, like, yes, you should really consider it. There are places like KU that are affordable that will give you a really great legal education, and I really have seen how it's opened up so many options, career-wise, like just different paths that you can go down, and there's sort of this certain, justified or not, like people have a certain view of you when they know you went to law school and graduate, you know, like it's just, there's still that kind of prestige around it, which is helpful when you're navigating whether or not you want to lean into it or do something else. It's still helpful as a tool. But for undergrad, I feel like whatever you're interested in, just go for it and lean into the research, the writing. And if you like public speaking, I probably should have tried more of that. Like if you can get over that kind of stuff, that's what's going to be most helpful later. Like the individual subject matters, I think, unless you're going to be an engineer or whatever, where obviously you need to know the math to get to the next level. But any like kind of liberal arts or whatever, unless you know, like I want a PhD in that and I want to teach, I don't think the subject necessarily matters as much. But if you're interested in it, then you'll be willing to get through all the research and the writing and the skills that you have to learn if you actually like the subject. If you hate the subject, then you're just going to be like, well, I don't have to do all this stuff. I don't think you're going to get as much
That's a good point.
out of it.
Yeah, I do think there are a lot of students who really enjoy their religious studies classes, but think, what am I gonna do with that when I graduate?
Yeah, now I wonder,
So-
I mean, how many liberal arts degrees are they
Yeah.
doing something directly related to that? I mean, legitimate question, I don't know.
Yeah.
How many are? I've hired a lot of people now, and just having, it's usually just bachelor's degree, you know, we're not like looking for somebody necessarily who had a pre-law, you know, focus or anything like that. I mean, that's certainly great, or criminology, or whatever it is. Some people have relevant degrees, but by and large, just even having a bachelor's degree. I've hired people who have MPAs that do great in the court system, and of course we hire attorneys. But
Are you
yeah.
looking for particular skill, if you're not looking for that kind of
Well,
specific training, are you looking for particular skills?
being able to write well is really important. We also do a fair amount of training, and so the public speaking can be really helpful. And I remember, I think it was like a class on mysticism, we had to do presentations. And so that is another skill that really helped out, although you wind up doing a lot of that in law school too, but it's good to have that background. And so being able to write well, being able to analyze things and think critically about things, which is definitely something that comes through religious studies classes, is important.
If I could go back, I would pick a different major. Do religious studies.
Yeah. So I've thought about whether it was right to go to law school much more than I've ever thought about whether it was right to get a religious studies degree.
I
So,
think that's fair.
yeah, I never second guessed that once I made that decision.